Okay, welcome to In Thailand Expat Radio, and your host is Lawyer Mark. So today I'm going to give you a little explanation of who I am, and the reason for this is that there have been some comments about is this person really a lawyer, for whatever that means. Let me just start off by saying that I am recording these uh, little podcasts for you to provide you information that's useful to expats, information that's useful for people who may be deciding to move to Thailand, and general information about expats in Southeast Asia. I was born in California, and I attended university for a few years. And during that time, I was very young. I started university when I was 16 years old. Uh, I wasn't really focused, to be honest with you. I was out partying and drinking a lot of beers. This was the age of Animal House. That film had just come out, and that's pretty much what my uh, early university life was like. Uh, for After about 2 years, I was only getting B's and C's in university. I really wasn't focused. And so I began working in restaurants and pretty much stopped going to university at that time. In restaurants, I worked as a cook and eventually moved up. I was kitchen manager, restaurant manager, running front of the house and back of the house operations for several restaurants, mostly in the upscale diner type business. Some of you may know in San Francisco, restaurants like Foghat Diner, and this was one of the earlier upscale diner restaurants that I moved through management at. And it was quite a unique experience. It was quite cutting edge. There really wasn't anything like that in the US at the time. And so that was a really unique opportunity. What I came to realize is I didn't feel that there was really a future in America as a chef, at least not the way I imagined it. My parents were pushing me to go to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, France, and become a certified accredited chef. And I would have done that, and definitely I would have done it today if I had made a decision. But back then, it wasn't that sexy to be a chef. And that's exactly what I said at the time. There weren't these people like Bobby Flay and Jamie Oliver or Emeril Lagasse. None of these people were around then. The Food Channel didn't exist. And so the life of a chef was hard work with most of the profit going to the owner of the restaurant. So if you were a chef owner, you could make a living at it. But as a chef, it was quite an exploitive relationship. Instead, I decided to finish my university degree and go to law school. By that time, I had moved from California, and I was much more focused when I re-entered the university. At the same time, I was working full-time as a legal assistant, and I paid for all my university work by myself. No student loans, nothing from my parents. That was all on my own. My parents lived in a very wealthy neighborhood, one of the richest neighborhoods by the housing costs in America. However, we had the cheapest house in that area, and but they moved because they wanted to get me and my brothers out of the LA public school system. and get us into a different school district because the LASD is a terrible school district. And so I completed my university degree, a bachelor's in political science. I then applied for and was accepted to law school, completed law school. All through law school, I was working at law firms as well. And I was doing what is called being a legal clerk, which is kind of being a junior associate without going to court. In law school, I was on the law review. I wrote several articles that have been published, mostly about various subjects involving tort law, and particularly about the restaurant industry and the service of alcohol. And I'm considered an expert in that area. Upon finishing law school, I took the bar examination. That's a 3-day exam to get licensed in one state. And then I subsequently took the exam in another state. I worked as a lawyer for 10 years in the United States. During that time, I was doing mostly labor law, employment litigation, involving quite a few things. One of the interesting cases I worked on was an Equal Pay Act claim brought by a government union against a state. And that was for women to try to get paid the same as men, but who were in different job specifications that required similar educational qualifications. I was working on the government side, not the union side, but I've done both sides. I'm an equal opportunity lawyer, like most lawyers are. And as long as the client is paying, I don't really care which side it is. I was dismayed by some incidents that occurred in America. The first one occurred in San Francisco. It was the 101 California Street shooting. Someone came into a law firm and shot 7 people, and 3 of them were the top labor attorneys in San Francisco. So I knew them. I was quite shook up by it. I was working close by to that shooting, and it really impacted the way I felt. And that caused me to leave California. And I continued working as a lawyer. And the next incident that disturbed me greatly was the credit crisis of 2007. If you recall, there was a phrase that was, the banks are too big to fail. And so there was a bailout of the banks and the insurance industry. I felt that was a misuse of the money I paid as a taxpayer. I will never forgive the United States government for doing that. It was on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. Bush started the bailout, Obama finished it, and that's not something that I'm proud of about the American government. And I basically felt that they abandoned the normal citizens in favor of special interests, particularly Goldman Sachs. And as a result, I decided to move to Thailand. I have been traveling to Thailand for about 10 years before that, and all through Asia for holidays and some work. Sometimes I had working vacations in Asia. That's because some of the clients I was dealing with were Filipino, were Taiwanese, and sometimes I would go make marketing proposals to them, meet with them, or sometimes during the pendency of a case, they would return to their home country, and I would need to meet with them there. So that brings me to Thailand in early 2007. Uh, I've been researching Thailand. I loved the food. I loved the people, loved the beaches. Weather's great. Seemed like a up and coming place. I've always tried to chase expanding economies. And so I decided to do some research and figure out how to get into Thailand long term. And although my research at the time was rather crude, what I determined was that one possibility was to teach English in Thailand, and that would provide a work visa and permit. I did further research, and I found that in order to be a teacher, it was recommended that you get a TEFL certificate. A TEFL certificate is a 120-hour teaching course. You learn quite a bit about what it takes to be a teacher. A lot of it is the same theory and practical knowledge that would be taught if you were to pursue a master's in education. So I went and did my research, found a good TEFL school. They said they would provide a non-B visa of 1 year. I mailed my passport to Houston, Texas, and sure enough, within a week, I had back a passport with a non-B visa for 1 year. And then I moved to Thailand and took the course, did very well in it, obviously. It was something I was interested in. I excelled in it, got an A in the course. It included a lot of teaching, practical teaching, demonstration. You have to do 20 hours of demonstration work and then 100 hours of classroom work in order to be awarded a TEFL certificate. Anything less than that, anything online, is not really accepted by the Ministry of Education in Thailand. So I completed this TEFL certificate, and interesting story, I was in that class. It just so happened there was another person in that class who I recognized his name, never had met him, but recognized his name from a fantasy NFL football league that I'm in that involved people from Pattaya. And I saw his name on the attendance list, went up to him, and sure enough, he was the guy from my football league. And so we became close friends. He was in the course. He got a job offer in Rayong teaching English, EP English, at a school, a very good government school. But he decided he wanted to go into a partnership to go into business as a go-go bar owner. And so he referred me for this job offer. I took the Rayong teaching job, and he went and became a bar owner. So I was teaching in Rayong. He was, and living in Pattaya. He was basically working in, not really working, but being a bar host type person in Go-Go in Pattaya. To conclude his part of the story, he got screwed over by his British partners. They iced him out of actually being able to go to work in this bar, and he lost his entire investment. He had a wife who also got a job working in that Go-Go, and he went back to America to work in a car dealership. A few months later, she was arrested. His wife was arrested for procuring underage girls for some of the people who frequent that bar. I've only been to that bar twice, and it was a good bar. I never saw any action like that, but apparently that's something his wife may have gotten involved in after he left Thailand. And never heard from him or her again. Uh, but anyway, I was teaching in Rayong and went to, uh, had some opportunities come to me where I was teaching also business English in the factories all along the eastern seaboard. The guy who was my friend who owned the go-go bar, he left me his car when he left. I paid for him, obviously. And so I was able to live in Pattaya, drive to Rayong in the morning, teach, have a work permit there, and then teach in the evenings at the factories, teaching business English to adults. That did not last that long. By the end of 2007, I was getting kind of tired of driving all that distance. It was driving about 200 miles a day, and found a job offer in Bangkok, working as, I was initially hired as a teacher, but the company had no intention to having me just teach. They wanted me to teach to their staff English, maybe about 3 or 4 hours a week. And the rest of the time I would be doing some legal work, but really they wanted me to do HR because I had quite a bit of labor training, employment law training, and they had some really serious employment situations in the company. They had employees that had stolen intellectual property, some software. It was an IT company and had tried to compete with them. So they needed those people put in their place. And so they brought me on to do that, to do teaching and to handle the HR because they realized that their HR was a problem, and that's what caused that situation to occur. So I worked for that company for a little over 5 years, and I was basically I was doing a lot of employment law work. I was their HR. So what would happen is a lot of times they were quite insistent on their disciplinary procedures, and I was the one who was the lightning rod who took all the heat and had to, unfortunately, fire people to terminate them. Believe me, I hired a lot more people than I terminated, and my specialty was hiring expats, mostly who were already here in Thailand, but sometimes I would bring them in from other countries, particularly the United States and the UK. Anytime I terminated a expat, it was a dramatic scene. My life was frequently threatened. People basically wanted to kill me. Those terminations never resulted in any legal action. And eventually the people went away. They lost. I fortunately moved on. I'll talk about that. And that's a good thing because, you know, I need to keep moving on because if I stay in one company too long, some of those terminations are going to catch up to me and somebody will take me out. That's just the way. Jobs are very hard to find in Thailand. And if you don't have a job, it's very hard to stay in Thailand legally. And these are people who, you know, needed their income. So it's just the way things are. And, you know, I need to keep moving on so that I don't become a target. Also, the Thai people, although they move on and find new jobs when they get terminated, they tend to be very likely to file lawsuits. And as a result of that, I probably was a witness as HR in about 15 labor cases. And those involve going to court every day for a few weeks. and I would testify as the HR. We would have our own local counsel who I managed and would instruct on how to conduct our defense. We won all 15 of the cases that I did, some other cases as well that were commercial disputes, including a case involving one of the larger law firms in Thailand. But basically, when I would go and testify in front of judges, I never talked about being a lawyer. Although, you know, I had a work permit that said I was USA legal coordinator. When I testified, I was testifying as head of HR. And I never mentioned my law background. Almost in every case that I did, every trial that I was testifying in, the judge would catch on that I was a lawyer and would ask me if I was a lawyer. The proceedings in Thailand are in Thai, so I would have a translator, but most of the judges have a good understanding of English. And that's just because labor courts are specialty courts, and the trend in Thailand is for the specialty courts that the judges, although they get their Bachelor of Law in Thailand, a 4-year degree, they really need to go to the US or UK and get an LLM, which is a master's degree in law, and that takes 1 to 2 years. So most of them have that English legal training, and they're able to understand enough English. They hear me testify in English, and they can pick up by the way I testify that I was a trained lawyer in America. So when I'm brought on as HR, I'm brought on for massive expansion, and that includes Thai and expat workers, foreign workers. Usually I'm brought in because of my recruitment skills. It's just something I've developed over the years and gotten very good at it. And so I've kind of become an expert in not just in the recruitment process, but also the legal aspect of bringing in foreign workers into Thailand. And that includes visas and work permits. I learned both the Board of Investment and Ministry of Labor systems. There's 2 separate systems, and learned them myself, was doing them myself. Eventually I hired an assistant to help me with that, and I trained her on how to do it. Once my assistant became good enough, although I would go with her to do work permit and visa processing, the officers at those government buildings would prefer that I stay out of it and just supervise. Although I dealt with them and worked with them over the years, once I have a Thai person trained and doing that, they prefer the Thai person to do that. And that's because that's the whole idea of the what are called the foreign experts in the Ministry of Labor and BOI systems, is that the company should have a training system in place so that the various Thai employees that are brought on are trained up and eventually can take those roles from the foreign workers. Not that there won't still be foreign worker managers, but that the program is designed to train Thais and give them the job skills so that they can move up as well. And I fully support that. I went to the BOI several times making proposals that involved expansions of companies and hiring foreign workers to assist with that, and a plan for training and bringing in lots of Thai workers. Usually it was about 2 Thai workers to each foreigner. If you've heard that there has to be a 4-to-1 ratio, that's for minimalized capital companies. So companies that come in with 2 million or 4 million baht, they're going to have a 4-to-1 Thai to foreigner ratio for their workforce. The companies I've worked for have all had large capital, large revenues, and there is no requirement. Sometimes when I've been in downsizing mode, I've worked for a company that got down to a 1-to-1 ratio of expats to Thai workers. So that's not prohibited. Um, in doing the HR work for this first company, which was an IT company, a lot of their products were sold in the United States. And while they were feeding the US market, they were expanding rapidly. Their products were bought by governments, by police departments all over the world. However, competition caught up to them, and people came in that were offering a similar product, maybe not as good quality, but for a much lower price. As a result of that competition, the company decided to focus more on the Thailand market, and that changed what I did. The hiring changed more to Thai people. We let a lot of foreign workers go, and I saw it as just a basic retraction from foreign markets, and making the company smaller, minimalizing it. And that's kind of difficult as HR. I was also myself having to diversify in the kind of work I did. I was doing some finance work, some marketing work, and I saw pretty much, that the end was coming near. Not that I wouldn't have a job if I stayed there, just because I'd been there a long time, but I was kind of a burden on the company because I had a fairly high salary, and they didn't need that HR legal presence anymore. Once they had reduced their workforce substantially. So I decided to look elsewhere, and I soon hooked up with a factory. Was a little different work setting for me. Very large factory that employs 5,000 people, another multinational company. And again, doing the same kind of thing, HR and legal. That company had a tremendous amount of both HR and legal problems. The factory had been in Thailand for 20 years. It was an Australian company, and they had just let the factory exist like it was, managed by Thais, completely independent of the headquarters in Australia. And so they had a lot of labor problems as a result of that, including a fairly violent strike. And so they brought me on to try to fix that up. What that involved was engaging in what's called collective bargaining. It's a negotiation for labor contracts. And a lot of those were heated, and the Ministry of Labor was involved in all of them. Each year that the contract would come up, I would have to go to the Ministry of Labor and appear before the top officials in the Ministry of Labor, trying to hammer out negotiations, avoiding strikes. And they were very appreciative of the work I did. Yes, I had a work permit. They never asked to see it. They knew I was a lawyer from America. They liked the fact that I was there for a couple of reasons. One is that previously, when the company was involved in these negotiations, they had a lot of trouble getting authority from the company CEO, who spent half his time in Australia, half his time in New York City. And that's because they didn't have an in-house counsel. They were relying upon a labor specialist who was Thai, who's a very good in what he does. He's not a lawyer, but he's very good in what he does. He's a professor of labor relations. And I worked with him during the collective bargaining process, but he took a back seat. He was mostly to kind of be there as the personal contact with the labor unions attorney. As far as the contract that we created, that's really what the head labor officials at the Ministry of Labor appreciated from me is that I was the one who was able to draw up contract language, and there would be, it would go through two translators. Each side had their own translator. We'd come to an agreement as to the language, and it's just not something that the attorneys who had preceded me and the one on the labor union side had been forthcoming in doing. Basically because Thai lawyers are very lazy, and they're not creative. The education system doesn't provide any kind of outlet for creative thinking. It doesn't encourage creative thinking. In law school, all they do, and it's just a Bachelor of Law, just a 4-year degree, all they do is memorize codes and procedures. They don't, they're not involved in creative thinking and in real contract drafting. They are copy and paste lawyers, and that's unfortunate. So the labor officials were real happy that I was involved. As a matter of fact, when I was at the factory about once every 3 or 4 months, they would come by the factory, talk to both sides, management and labor, make sure there weren't any problems. By the way, they never checked for work permits, even though I was employing about 100 foreign workers. Never checked for that. Labor raids are very unusual in Thailand. So that's basically the way things were at the factory. I was doing a lot of legal work as well. I was transferred for 6 months to Sydney, Australia, to work on some closing up some legal matters over there involving some real estate holdings, and doing some personal work for the CEO. But I didn't think I was treated real well with respect to the housing accommodations. I was having to pay for housing accommodations in Sydney and in Bangkok, so it was a little expensive for me. And so basically, that was a company that had some poor management in terms of how they were going to handle this renegade Thai factory. And they never were willing to go in and replace some of the Thai management who had become entrenched in a very patronage oriented system where the workers were getting loans from their managers and therefore were obedient to them because they owed them money. And there were a lot of issues there. And so I decided that it would be best to move on. That was after about 3 years. And again, at the factory, I did have several labor cases. I probably had 5 labor cases there. Some of them were in front of the labor board where I could actually represent the company as the company attorney. But we had some court actions as well. And again, we won most of those. The ones that we didn't win, we would settle. So that was pretty much, it was good working for the factory. It was a good experience. It was just difficult dealing with a factory that was basically under the control of Thai management. And the CEO was trying to figure out a way to come to grips with that and get control over it. But he never really did because he wasn't willing to displace the existing Thai management. Although I was one of the people brought on and actually replaced a very senior Thai HR manager who'd been in place for 20 years, and he was quite corrupt. So I decided that I wanted to expand and do some project work for a while. And from that factory, I went to work at one of the largest law firms in Thailand doing some project work. It was full-time work permit provided, but it was understood that it would be a fixed term contract. And I was brought in to work on 2 things that I kind of had knowledge from America. The first one was Thailand adopted a class action act, and adopting it straight from the US system. They copied it almost exactly. And that was in December 2015 that they implemented it. I was brought on about 4 or 5 months before that, did some client research papers explaining how it was going to work. Those were eventually published. And I also did work on what's called FCPA. That's the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. In other words, Anti-Bribery Act. If you, as an expat, US expat or British expat, are involved in any way in a bribe in Thailand or anywhere abroad, you are subject to prosecution in the United States. And in order to comply with this law, many of the US clients of this law firm were doing FCPA compliance. And these are long documents you have to prepare, which detail all your shareholders of the company, all the directors, their backgrounds, their families, whether they've worked in government, whether they've had criminal cases brought against them. And in Thailand, almost all lawyers have had criminal cases brought against them. That's because they allow the defamation cases to have a criminal side, so it's criminal and civil. And defamation is a rich man's way, the HISO way of attacking any kind of opponent to whatever they're doing. They file a defamation case. So the attorneys that I worked with, they had all been sued and had criminal actions against them for defamation. They did employ a few foreign attorneys who handled arbitrations and mediations. Some of them had decided to leave Thailand because of these defamation cases. The other ones were trying to struggle through it, not real happy, kind of on the fearful side, and I can't blame them. The penalties for defamation are quite high. And so I was assisting with this FCPA and assisting with the class action suit, preparing client presentations so that they could deal with clients who had questions about these because it affects the way they operate. Another project I did around the same time was working for the Ombudsman Office in Changwatana, which is the national government building. So I was working for the national government as a trainer in dispute resolution, is what we call it. And they needed assistance because they were getting a lot of complaints both by foreigners and by Thais about demands for bribes. And so this fit in with the FCPA action work I was doing. So the Ombudsman Office, they kind of are a precursor to the Anti-Corruption Commission. The Anti-Corruption Commission handles the filed formal cases of corruption. The Ombudsman Office isn't limited to corruption, but usually bribery is the substance of a complaint that is made to them. And it's just a mediating body. They could sometimes refer cases to the Anti-Corruption Commission. That wasn't their purpose. It wasn't their goal. Their goal was to try to get the two parties to come together and resolve it without any criminal prosecution being brought. Because that's the Asian way, is to try to have everybody save face, resolve any payments of monetary compensation, and allow the parties to basically have a continuing relationship. And that's just something that Westerners need to come to grips with, is that the way of business in Asia is to try to resolve these matters and not run to court. However, be aware that a lot of countries in Asia, the people who live here are becoming more litigious. And so you are seeing quite a few labor lawsuits all over, especially in Taiwan, which I deal with a lot, and Thailand, and in China, you're starting to see them. Not so much in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is very employer biased, basically. But Taipei has moved towards the labor side. I'm dealing with that now in my current company. And so there are situations that will blow up into litigation. After these projects were in process, and I was doing this kind of work, I was also looking for new employment, doing the full-time HR and legal work. And I found a multinational company to do that, very conveniently located near where I live. I'm able to walk to work every day, 10-minute walk. I'm in the heart of Bangkok, so it's very nice. It's a multinational company. It has global offices all over the world. I do spend quite a bit of time in Hong Kong and Taipei, but I'm dealing with issues all throughout Europe. We have offices in Madrid, in Lisbon, in London, in big office in Copenhagen. So I'm dealing with all those companies and their people as well. I'm doing the same kind of massive hiring of expats that I always do. In the last month, I've hired 14 expats, about half that number of Thais. Right now, they're interested in bringing some of the positions from their global offices, especially those in Europe, here to Thailand because they can employ people in Thailand much cheaper. So I've been hiring quite a few accountants and salespeople for the industry I'm in. And so I do handle quite a bit of legal issues. It's a lot of the company I'm involved with has hundreds of contracts they enter into every month, and those all have to be reviewed by an attorney and working on the fine tuning of the negotiations and doing the rapid expansion. So I've been doing HR and legal in Thailand for 10 years. For most of the time I've been here, I initially started in Pattaya, but within a year I was living in Bangkok and enjoying it. And now I'm trying to provide you some information about visas, work permits, legal things, the expat community, and things that would be helpful to decide whether you would want to move to Thailand and maybe make it a permanent resident situation. I understand that a lot of people want to retire here. They don't want to work. There's other channels for that. Some really good people in Thailand for that. Kevin Thailand's one of the real good ones on retirement. And there have been people who talk about the tourist industry and, being tourists and living off tourist visas and doing travel vlogs, and that's fine, including the red light district if they want to show that. But I don't see anybody who really has a good grasp of the expat working scene, and that's what I'm going to try to bring to this channel. Now, when I initially thought about it, I wanted to do quite a bit of video work. I don't have any video editing background at all, no real skills as a photographer or a cinematographer, and I was willing to learn that, pick up some of the equipment. Well, I did an interview on someone's channel, Video Freedom, and Kevin Thailand posted that interview. I had no problem with Kevin Thailand doing it. I wanted the information I had about work permits and what we call digital nomads and the requirements for them with the visas. I wanted that to get out to the public. So I didn't mind that a good channel like Kevin Thailand published it. But what happened was I got a whole bunch of hate from it. And these are jealous people who for some reason they don't like the message I'm giving, that it's okay to be a digital nomad, that Thailand really wants these digital nomads coming to Thailand. Yes, they'd like them to pay taxes, but they're not going to impose draconic and archaic work permit requirements on digital nomads who don't fit that profile and can't possibly meet the requirements of a work permit. So I gave some opinions about this. I said Thailand's kind of ignoring this because they don't want to be seen discouraging this kind of tourism. They don't want to discourage the accumulation, the brain drain that's coming from other countries into Thailand. I put that an estimate that there may be as many as 2 million digital nomads in Thailand at any time during the year. And these people have good computer skills. They know programming, they know SEO, and it's something, they're creative thinkers. And that's what Thailand really needs to push forward what is called Thailand 4.0, which is a futuristic economy, getting away from the labor economy and into more of an intellectual property type economy. So they want these people here. They want the venture capital attracted. Unfortunately, there's some people in Chiang Mai who don't want to see these digital nomads. They think Thailand is all theirs, even though they've only been in Thailand a few months. And they think they have opinions that have some validity. In truth, they have no standing to be talking about this. They've been in Thailand for a few months and they don't understand how the system works, what the Labor Department's interests are, and the fact that they have no interest in trying to bust people for working without work permits. And so I attracted a lot of hate. It brought back a lot of memories of the death threats that were made against me, the shooting at 101 California Street. A lot of death threats are made on YouTube. And you don't know if these people would track you down. I do know somebody who vlogs in New York City and he has a fairly large subscriber base. He was tracked down and freaked out, and he had to move to another state and become anonymous. And that's what I've decided to do, because I saw he became anonymous, and I decided I would become anonymous as well and not reveal my name or too much personal information, not show my image. And that's unfortunate, because I wanted to show you some unique parts of Bangkok that you don't see in other vlogs. And I might do that with my voice recorded over it, but I'm going to be very cautious about showing Bangkok or putting up any kind of video content. And I think I can get my message across without it. But hopefully in the next year or so, I'll put on some video content that won't show my image. I'm not going to give out any personal information. So I hope this was useful for you in figuring out who I am and the fact that I am an attorney. I did provide some of my supporting documents, which were redacted, to Video Freedom, because I was being attacked on his channel for not having, not being having a JD or being a licensed attorney. I can't provide all the information because just providing the information gives my identity away, and I'm not going to do that. So that's the way it's going to be. If you can't tell that I'm a lawyer by the way I talk, by the information I present in these radio broadcasts, then you really don't know what lawyers do. And again, I'm just doing this to help, particularly help the expat community, help the digital nomads, help people who might be deciding to move to Thailand. I gain nothing from it. Frankly, I don't have time to deal with it, but I have a lot of information to share. And I think it would be kind of selfish when I see people having all these questions, not to provide a platform for them to get answers, and answers from somebody who has credibility and standing to give those answers, and not some lunatic who thinks everybody should be busted and arrested for AdSensing their videos. We just don't need that in the expat community, and Thailand doesn't need it. The TAT does not want to scare these kind of entrepreneurs away from the country. They want these people to come to Thailand and to reach out to other people and build the economy. So I think while some people may think they have good intentions, they don't. And they're just doing it out of their own anger and sense of self-grandizement. Well, that's it for today. And this has been In Thailand, Expat Radio, your host, Lawyer Mark. Have a good day.